When I woke up this morning, feeling kinda so got you connected. Shadow coming from my left side.
What is up, people? If you're watching this video, you're probably wondering who Wim Hof is, or is his teachings bullshit? And to be honest, I have no idea, but I'm gonna find out. My name's Garen Phillips, and for the next 10 weeks, I want to be testing and reviewing Wim Hof's online course, which is on his website. For those of you who don't know, he's pretty much a superhuman. He climbed Mount Everest in nothing but shorts and shoes. If you want to learn more about him, here's a little bit longer video, but that's not what this one's about. Now, for the next 10 weeks, I'm going to be using a thermal camera to track any of body change temperatures as I go through the course, and I'm also going to be using a heart rate monitor to put a bit of data behind it. If you want to see what these are, you can check out the links below. This is week 0, and I call it week 0 instead of week 1 because I have to establish a baseline to judge my experience through the course, which means I have to take a ice cold shower and an ice bath with no training. This is going to be fun. Now you're going to notice in a second my heart rate is going to spike as soon as I hit the ice cold water. I'm predicting that as I go through this course, this will become less and less. Now I'm either going to do another one of these at week 5 or either week 10 after I'm finishing the course. But the second time I do this, I'm going to have to do one without the breathing technique and then do another with the breathing technique to compare and contrast to see if it's if my body's actually building a tolerance to the cold water, or if the breathing technique is actually influencing my body's response to the cold.
Fuck.
Alright, right off the bat, do not try what I just did. It's extremely dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. There's a thing called cold water shock, which can cause cardiac arrest. This isn't the first time I've ever been in cold water, so I know what my body can and cannot do. For anybody that has never done this or doesn't know anything about cold water, don't do what I just did. It's extremely dangerous. This isn't part of the Wim Hof method. This is something I'm doing just for a baseline because I'm going to do it again at the end of the 10 weeks. With that said, next up is contrast shower. Now, interesting, you're going to note this time the water's hot right now, but my heart rate's still spiking, so my body's actually anticipating the cold water before it actually hits me, and now I'm turning it, and then the heart rate's going to spike even more. I should note that the hot water is completely off, so it is 100% cold water. It's definitely shocking my nervous system, and my heart rate spikes to only about 133 this time, compared to the ice cold bath, which was up to 155. And as soon as the hot water hits, you can see in the thermal imaging, my heart rate starts to decline. Now, contrast showers are designed to increase your circulation by basically the hot water dilates the blood vessels, and then the cold water contracts them, and it helps increase blood flow. But it also helps increase your lymph system. Now, you're probably familiar with lymph nodes, but you may or may not be familiar with how the system works exactly. It is tied in with your digestive system to transport fats through your body. It helps transport your immune system and immunodefenses, and it connects directly with your circulatory system to filter out certain things. Basically, the veins, if you want to call them that, are one-way valves, and they don't have any direct pump. They don't have a heart like your circulatory system. The only way they can flow is through direct muscle stimulus, or your breathing is also another way. But basically, contrast showers increase the total circulation throughout your whole body because it's basically hitting your entire skin and contracting every muscle. Now you'll notice the second time here, My heart rate's fluctuating a bit this time, which I'm not really sure why, but it's definitely a lot lower than the first time, so my body is adapting to the cold water. As for your lymph nodes, they act like a checkpoint for your lymph system. As the body transports samples from the blood through the lymph nodes, if they detect a foreign invader, they release immune responses to attack and kill them before they get out of control. And now you're probably familiar with the lymph nodes under your chin that sometimes get swollen if you're sick. Tonsils are also another example, but they're actually all throughout your body. One of the more noticeable organs of the lymph system is actually the spleen. It doesn't act specifically like a lymph node, but one of the interesting things about it is it can actually hold a large reservoir of red blood cells that are oxygenated. So they act like a air tank, kind of. Now, whether Wim Hof's breathing technique actually influences that and can be used as a reservoir for air, it's not a question that I can really answer. But it is a interesting thing to note about the connection between the lymph system and circulatory system. We're now on the last cycle of the cold water, and you can see my heart rate's barely over 110. It's not really responding. Physically, the cold water isn't that shocking. I'm starting to get used to it. It isn't nearly as painful, especially not nearly as painful as the ice bath. I'm going to go ahead and leave the thermal imaging up and the heart rate monitoring. Basically, I'm just staying there, letting my surface temperature warm back up. We may see a change in that as the weeks go on, I don't know. You can see as each time I turn the water from hot to cold, my heart rate isn't spiking as much during the contrast shower. I'm predicting that as I progress through Wim Hof's training, that will become even more prevalent. My heart rate won't spike nearly as much. After I got out and dried off, I went upstairs and got into a hot shower, but the thing about that, you do not want to warm up yourself very quickly. Slow and steady is the way to go for cold water and hypothermia. If you warm up too fast, it will let the cold blood rush into your core. Even after I warmed up, I was still having the physiological symptoms of hypothermia. I was still shaking and jittering, even though I was completely warm. The contrast shower obviously was a lot less. The water was only about 60 degrees, but it's physiologically, when you get hit with something like this, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and what happens is basically it shuts down all non-vital functions of your body, like digestion. And another thing that I don't know if a lot of people know, your frontal cortex, which is your rational thought and logical thinking and language and all that stuff, also shuts down, because we've only had that ability for about 50 to 80,000 years, depending on which study you look at. So yeah, when this happens, you literally cannot think. It literally shuts down your logical thought, which is also a very dangerous thing if you don't know what you're doing. Physiologically, the way this works, basically, and there's case studies that have been released on this. You can check out my website below where I go over the case studies and scientifically how this works. But the TLDR is, the breathing technique raises your pH level of your blood, which shuts down acid-sensing pain receptors, and it basically makes your body not respond to your pain receptors. Basically, when you get hit with cold water, your nerves send a signal to your brain to react, and that's what causes the shivering and all the other responses from cold shock. And basically, his technique shuts that system down to a degree. Now, don't quote me on this because I'm not an expert on it. I'm just going through this as I learn, but that's basically what I've taken from watching quite a few of his videos and going through the scientific studies. Now, to give you an idea of physically what it felt like, the ice bath was excruciatingly painful. It was horrible. Basically, it felt like a bunch of knives were being stabbed into every inch of my skin. I planned on getting submerged down to my chest, but it was so utterly painful and mind-numbing that I couldn't even move. My logical thought shut down. I couldn't really think of anything other than, Jesus, this is painful as hell. Once I got out of the water, I pretty much couldn't think. I could barely function. My predictions as I go through this training course is I'm Obviously, my body will not respond as severely. Fight or flight will not kick in as much. I'll be able to think and stay mindful of what's going on a lot better. That's pretty much it. If you would like to learn more about it, you can check out my other videos or my website where I go through pretty much all the scientific studies over Wim Hof currently. If you'd like to check out Wim Hof's 10-week course, link is in the description. I'm also testing out Wim Hof's breathing technique on lifting and cardio training, so if you want to check that out, you can check out my website. Basically, I'm looking for an increase in rep counts using the technique, or I'm seeing a lesser load on my cardiovascular system during biking and cardio training. I'm Garen Phillips, and see you next week.
When I woke up this morning, feeling kinda churned from last night. I was about to get up when a shadow coming from my left side. My attention